One Piece isn't political in the way so many like to claim it is. Now, I'm not dumb to the reason why someone might think it is political. It's not hard to see why this reading has legs. The Celestial Dragons are literal parasitic aristocrats who enslave people and face zero consequences. The world government burns libraries, rewrites history, and maintains power through propaganda and force. There's a revolutionary army explicitly trying to overthrow the system. Doflamingo gives a whole speech about how justice is defined by whoever wins. The evidence is right there. If you squint, it looks like Oda's building a critique of hierarchical powers, colonialism, maybe even capitalism itself. It's textually supported. It feels smart. It gives the story weight. But here's the thing. If One Piece were really doing what these readings claim, it would be a much simpler story. Luffy would care about systems. The revolutionaries would be unambiguously heroic, not to mention focused on for more. The Marines would have no moral complexity. Oda would prescribe something, a political solution, an economic alternative, a vision of how to reorganize society. We wouldn't have characters like Dr. Vegapunk, when announcing something big to the world, making a point not to do these things and be careful with his declarations because it's so easy to be wrong and misunderstand things. One Piece is an adventure story about personal freedom in a world of competing powers, where nearly every faction has sympathetic and monstrous elements, and where the protagonist's answer to how should society work is essentially, I don't care. I just want to eat meat and party with my friends. That's not activism. That's not ideology. That's something else entirely. And it's what we're going to miss if we keep insisting on reading One Piece as a political manifesto. Now, I'm certain there is some confusion here, as most people tend to think in this binary when it comes to these discussions. It's often either One Piece is leftist or One Piece is a humorous pirate adventure and more. There's a certain nuance that's being lost in all this. A nuance that starts with understanding what politics actually is. Politics is the negotiation of power. Who gets what? Who decides? And under what rules? It's unavoidable because humans share limited resources, conflicting desires, and the need to coexist. Politics aren't just a matter of government. Politics show up anywhere hierarchy meets choice. It doesn't matter if it's a government, or a Discord server, or a friend group arguing where to eat. The moment someone says, let's do this instead of that, you're in political territory. It's basically the social version of physics. Energy transfer, but with human will instead of force. The reason why this is important to the One Piece discussion is because of how politics managed to pull this off. It's a juggling act between three things: order, freedom, and equity. No system can maximize all three. Increase order, you sacrifice freedom. Increase freedom, you risk inequality. Try to perfect inequality, you restrict both freedom and order. Politics is the art of deciding which imbalance we'll tolerate. And if you follow that chain of logic, politics isn't about ideology. It's about trade-offs. Ideology is just a map of preferred trade-offs. The left values equity more. The right values order or freedom more, depending on flavor. Libertarians worship freedom. Authoritarians worship order. Everyone's just picking which loss they can live with. And for all the leftists who like to claim Luffy does not care about equity whatsoever. Luffy is not a paragon hero who fights for justice. I have 5 different arcs which reflect this well. Alabasta, Vivi wants to save her country through diplomacy and minimize bloodshed. That's systematic thinking. Luffy doesn't care about systems or justice. Crocodile hurt Vivi, so he punches Crocodile. His morality isn't ideological, it's relational. Skypiea. The story's about land rights, colonial guilt, and historical injustice. Luffy ignores all of it. He rings the bell because he promised cricket, not to fix society. The politics revolve around him, not because of him. Fishman Island. The arc screams equity, prejudice, integration, trauma. Luffy doesn't philosophize. He just beats Hody for hurting his friends. When asked about human-fishman relations, he shrugs. I like my friends. That's not activism. It's personal loyalty. Oh, and if One Piece is really the leftist text people claim, you need to explain Hody Jones. He uses all the rhetoric. Historical oppression, systematic injustice, liberation, and the story treats him as a villain. Why? Because he's driven by inherited rage, not vision, not empathy. He defines himself by who he opposes, not what he stands for. If One Piece were endorsing that ideology, Hody would be sympathetic. Instead, it shows how empty he is when he admits his hatred is built on what he heard of other people's negative experiences, and Luffy punches him like he would anyone else. The story shows what happens when resentment replaces principle, when you use the language of justice to mask hate. So, if you're reading this as political activism, explain him without crying, "Bad writing." Now, do you see the pattern those One Piece's political types don't bring up? Every single time, Luffy's morality is personal, not universal, relational, not systematic, immediate, not ideological. An equity hero would free slaves on principle, care about unjust systems, even when those don't affect him personally, have a vision for how society should work, fight for everyone's freedom, not just his friends. Luffy frees people when they're his friends or in his way, walks past injustice unless it touches his crew, has no vision for society, he just wants to eat and eat, party, and sail, fights for his freedom and his people's freedom. That's not a leftist hero. It's not even a justice-oriented hero. That's a freedom hero. And freedom without equity is not a political program. It's a personal philosophy. Now, some might take this to argue that One Piece is political, just that it endorses freedom. That One Piece endorses libertarianism. However, that is incorrect, as the series features antagonists who showcase the drawbacks of this ideology, who Luffy comes into conflict with. Kaido wants a world where the strong rule the weak. Doflamingo enjoys absolute freedom, running a country in the underworld with no conscience. Blackbeard embodies pure, selfish freedom, willing to do anything to rise. None of them are endorsed by the story. One Piece is not a manifesto. This brings us to the final mistake I wish to highlight, that those pushing the One Piece's political narrative don't take into consideration. Just because a story has politics in it doesn't make it political. In art, there's two kinds of politics: systematic politics and partisan politics. Systematic politics is where a story has structures, laws, governments, revolutions that shape the world. That's world building. This is actually the sort of world building I embrace in my own work, which I'll link at the end of this video for those interested in what I'm like as a creator. Partisan politics, meanwhile, are when a story starts preaching ideology, when it tells you what to believe instead of showing you what to think about. This is something I can be critical of in art, even if it's ideology I agree with. When people call One Piece political, they're lumping those two together. They see the world government or the revolution army and think, aha, that's about capitalism or imperialism or whatever. But it's not. Again, Oda's not writing a manifesto. He's building a myth. One Piece operates the same way stories have operated for thousands of years before politics became a team sport or a replacement for religion. He's used in politics as a backdrop for something much older. The fight between freedom and control, individuality and conformity, truth and deception. Myth doesn't give you policy prescriptions. It doesn't tell you which system to vote for or which ideology to adopt. What it does is explore the eternal tension that exists underneath all political systems. The permanent contradiction of human existence that makes politics necessary in the first place. If One Piece were truly political, Luffy would have a speech about class consciousness. The revolutionaries would be perfect heroes. The Marines would be soulless villains. But that's not how it works. Every side has complexities, contradictions, moral gray zones. It's not, this is good, this is bad. It's, here's what happens when people chase power and freedom and what it costs them. So yeah, One Piece has politics the same way the ocean has waves. It's part of the environment, but it's not the point. And I feel that those who do read One Piece as partisan politics are harming what One Piece is. As for why, the reason is simple. They reduce it. They turn myth into propaganda. They make it smaller, more temporary, more tied to the moment. But again, One Piece is not activism. It is not ideology. One Piece is a mythic tale about what it costs to be free, about choosing your bonds rather than accepting the ones you are born into, about standing up not because the system is wrong, but because they hurt your friends. That's the oldest story humans have ever told. Also, seriously, if you wish to adopt a character as a symbol, Monkey D. Dragon literally exists for this purpose. So yeah, hopefully I've created a persuasive argument, but I'm open to pushback in the comments. And again, want to see me as a creative? Check out my work over here on my other channel.